Welcome to the Catbird Quilts. I'm Kathy Martin. So I've talked about creating external order to manage whips. Today's video is creating internal order and processes that you can put in place to maybe help you with those feelings of overwhelm to get through your whips. And of course, I have a lot to say about it. If you saw the previous video, you know that I have 13 works in progress of various types, some quilts, some quilty projects. And I talked about putting them together, each project containing them, and getting them off of your sewing table, off of your work table so that you can manage it, and how creating that external order can make you have a better sense of control, maybe, over your projects. And today, I want to explore the idea and a couple of things that I have done just very recently to get a handle on my brain, really, about it. So I have a pretty hefty drive into work every day, and I often, and by often I mean every single day, call Paul on the way to work, and we talk for some or all of that drive. And we talk about the things we have to do this week, and we talk about the YouTube channel, and I'm a verbal processor, you may have noticed. And so I talk through like, oh, I need to do and I start listing off the need tos and the want tos. And I'm the kind of person that I want to make to-do lists, but I put everything on the to-do list, and some of them are need tos and some of them are want tos, and then I don't prioritize them. And then the list becomes its own burden. And so there definitely is a sense in which I very obviously need to get the thoughts out of my head and into something practical, which I think is the filling Paul's earful of all of the things that I need to do, but just rehearsing it with no practical thing to do with it has actually proved to be more stress-inducing. And so it helps because I say it out loud, but then it doesn't help because I'm not actually doing anything with that information except just talking about it. So I'm essentially rehearsing my overwhelm. And go figure, I go into work stress sometimes. But I did say on the phone the other day, I feel like I just need to do a big brain dump, like dump all of the contents, like out of my head and onto paper, for the same reason that I needed to get all of the loose projects contained. I needed to create some space. I'm holding a lot of things in my brain. And if you can get it out of your brain and into your hands, which is what Kate at the last Homely House says, gosh, I love that so much. And that's for her, she's talking about working on hand projects and sewing and knitting and spinning and all those things that she does. But for me, getting it out of my head and into my hands is creating useful tools. And so when I try to do those to-do lists, and I'm one of those people that I will do something not on the list and go back and write it on the list so that I can check it off. So I have a high need for accomplishment, sense of accomplishment. And you can't ever get everything on the list. It's the everything everywhere all at once. It's like it's too much. It feels too much even to make a list for. But nonetheless, I decided that I was going to sit down and just kind of, oh, this is a terrible phrase, word vomit out on paper and see if that would help me as opposed to just talking about it. So I began that process and just was jotting down notes of like what videos that I've been wanting to do. And if I do some other kind of project, what that would look like. And in the process, I started writing down my WIPs. And that's what I have stacked up here next to me. And I realized as I was just kind of trying to get it out of my head that some projects need one set of quilting tasks and other projects need another set of quilting tasks. So for example, this is that gorgeous Elena quilt block that I sewed 4 quilt blocks together with a purple shirt in the middle. And I even have the backing fabric picked out and the binding fabric picked out. And so what I need to make this into a completed project is I need to cut and sew the binding. I need to cut and piece the backing. I need to get batting, and then I need to quilt the quilt top and then sew it. And so I had that written down, and then I went to this one, which is actually almost identical. I have the backing. I have the binding, what I think is going to be the binding. So I need to cut and sew the binding. I need to cut and piece the backing, which might be fine in this one. And then I need to get the batting, quilt the quilt top, and then sew it together. And then bind it. And that is the nature of quilting. And it's what I love about quilting. There are so many different steps in the process. It never gets boring. Sometimes sewing block after block after block can get tedious, but the overall process of quilting, just about the time that I'm tired of doing one step, it's time for another one. But when you have a lot of WIPs, all of those steps, mentally holding that space. I need to do this on this one and this on this one and this on this one. And I say a lot I say a lot in my whole life, but definitely at work. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, which is gross. Who eats elephants? Gross. But the idea that if you have a really big project, or in this case, a lot of projects that feel like one massive project, taking those small bites is the way you get through it. But when you have a lot of projects, taking one bite at a time can sometimes feel like nothing is really getting done. So as I started doing my unloading what was in my brain, and I realized, well, this one needs cutting, and this one needs binding, and this one needs, and so on and so forth, it hit me that I'd been thinking about this wrong. And that's not actually right. I haven't been thinking about it wrong. I just didn't have enough internal order to help myself. And I stumbled on something, and I think it's a good way to think about it. I have this binder. This is my YouTube binder and quilting binder. And so I have the calendar and what videos I want to do and what things I'm thinking about. And then I have like quilt patterns and all kinds of stuff in here. So here was where I started my brain dump. And then I realized, what do I just need to sew? Like, what are my projects that I need to sew? And I only had one thing to sew. Well, there's 2 now, but at the time, I only thought of one, and it was the eyelet lace quilt. Everything's been pieced and cut. I just need to sew the rows together. Interestingly, when I started taking these bags out of my wheelie laundry basket, I realized there was another one that I need to sew. And if that is not evidence of the need for practices that take things out of your brain, I don't know what is. If I had not gone through that, I wouldn't have known. So I put huge letters, things to sew. Today happens to be my day off. And when we get done recording these videos, I get the afternoon to do my own enjoyment quilting. And I had been feeling very overwhelmed about it because I have things to sew and I have things to cut. I have all of these projects are in all different states. And so I was having a really hard time figuring out what I want to do this afternoon with my time. And it's limited and it's precious. My time off is so precious. So I do not like to squander my time. I wanted to sew, actually. I kind of tapped into my be in touch with myself. I just want to sew. But the reality is, I don't have a lot of projects that I can just sew. I have a lot of projects in a lot of different stages. So I thought, well, let me just write down the things that I need to do. And by need to, I mean the steps that are required to work on or finish that project. So the next page, things to cut. So I have, and I hate the word thing, and I don't like the word stuff either, but for this purpose. So I have squares that I need to cut for my 9-patch trip around the world quilt. I have the background fabric cut, but I need some additional pieces. I'm 2 rows away from finishing that quilt top. Is that not fascinating and exciting? But I have to do this cutting. I have binding that I need to cut for some of these pillow projects that I'm working on. I have that's a secret. Don't look at that. I have a secret project that I need to cut fabric for. And I have another block. Well, actually, it's the 2 secret quilts. I have cutting that I need to do for those projects. And then I was like, well, what's next? Well, I have things that I need to quilt. One of my quilts is off at the long arm quilter, but I have 2 throw pillows that are pretty close that need the quilt top quilted. And then I have this couple way quilt that I have just some additional quilting to do. Then I have things that I need to choose fabric for. And this is where I feel like I can get into trouble, because there are physical tasks I need to do, and then there are considerations. So, for example, I have, let me look and see. I have, on my 9-patch quilt, I need to figure out what backing I want to use for it. And I need to consider what binding based on the backing. These are pieces of plaid that I cut for a video that I thought that I might make additional magnolia quilt blocks for, but I need to figure out what pieces will go with that. So that's actually a fabric consideration. I have another one that I just need to figure out the backing for. And then on my navy blocks, you can see this is probably the thickest Ziploc. I want to do another yellow, like navy with yellow. I want to do a navy with red. I want to do another navy with gray. But that means actually considering the fabrics that I want to use and cutting them. But first, I can't move forward with cutting until I figure out which fabrics. So that's a step that sometimes I don't consider. And then I get this time off and I want to sit down and make a navy block. And I'm all about the air quotes right now. I want to make a navy block, but I haven't even chosen the fabric for it. And then I have patterns to figure out for test blocks. So one of these is for a video. Don't look. There was one other thing that I thought, I have a bunch of, this is a cigar box that I picked up. We have what's that called? A cigar place? It's called can't remember. It's a briary. So there's a briary actually nearby. And sometimes I'll go in and ask if they have any empty cigar boxes, and they usually do. And so I have all these, this is like, corners of half square triangles and little squares of things that I didn't use. And I just kind of put them in here, and I might make a project out of those later. But obviously I have too many projects right now. And so that's when it's in not a clear anything. It's a box at the bottom of this. So it's a way to organize my thoughts about my project. So this is the physical. This is the outside in. The inside out is thinking of my projects as what are the steps I need to do. And so before I can really spend an afternoon sewing, I really need to spend an afternoon cutting fabric. And what a great use of my time then. If I'm already cutting, I can cut for the 9-patch blocks. Then I can cut the binding for the pillow forms that I'm, not forms, envelope pillows that I'm going to make. And then I can cut fabric for the secret projects. And I can do all of my cutting in that big block of time that I have. And then at the end of that, now the next time I have a big block of time, which for me will be a couple of days from now, I only work in the morning, so I have the afternoon, I can sit down and sew, as opposed to starting, oh shoot, I can't sew, let me cut some, and then I make a few blocks, and then, oh gosh, I've got to cut some more, and then make a few more blocks. And I can do that. I have done that, and that's sometimes that if I have a little snippet of time. But having this mentally ordered by task, then I can go into my time more effectively. And I want to tell you, once I figured out the things I need to cut, the things I need to sew, the things I need to quilt, it's like my head became a balloon that had just gotten air blown into it. Just, oh, it's like, I really should be doing a laundry fabric softener commercial right now. I think I have all of the expression. It's like, oh, so anyway, that's how I felt. After having mentally ordered what I need to do with all of these packages, because as orderly as this is, and right now it does not look very orderly, as great as this is to have it grouped by project, even this stack can be overwhelming. But once I know what needs to be done with each one, and I know how much time I have, I can go, okay, well, I don't have an afternoon to cut everything, but I have this other project that I can just spend a few minutes and free motion quilt this cup away quilt and make a dent in that. And it's back to that idea of make a dent, and not like hit somebody with your car, but make a dent in the stack of things that you need to do. And wow, how great is that? It's the plan. There's external order, and now there's internal order, and now I know what I need to do next. And in my case, I'm needing to prioritize. So the blue blocks of the now WIP for the Sunday morning quilt blocks, this is not for anybody. These were in the bottom of my little square tote back in my little cube. I don't have to do anything with this right away. It's not pressing. I really do need to finish my quilt top for the 9-patch so that I can get that kind of show on the road. And the way to do that is now I know, okay, what has to be done for that one? And what needs to be done for that one is cutting. Okay, well, if I'm going to be cutting, then let me cut for all these other ones. And at the end of that time, what I will have something to show for it. And I'll have a big something, but that put me forward, not just in my 9-patch, it's going to put me forward. Let's look, actually. So my things to cut. So when I get done cutting today, and that's what I'll do now, because I know that's the most important thing to help me get my 9-patch done. That's the next step. Now that I know that that's the next step, I can also cut the binding for my eyelet lace quilt. I can cut the binding for that Adventureland pillow. I can cut the binding for the Elena quilt pillow. Then I have my secret, and then my other secret, and then my other secret. So I'll cut that fabric. Y'all are like, stop it with the secrets. Secrets keep us sick. But it's that idea of at the end of this afternoon, so I'm going to break and we're going to have lunch, and then I have the whole afternoon, and I'll have put myself forward down the road with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 projects. And then the next time I have time, my most high priority is ready to sew, which is really always what I want to do, is sew. And that's I don't have my yellow cup. Quilting makes me so happy. It's the sew. So, S-O, not S-E-W. So I hope this helps you. This process may not work for you. You may not want to sit down and unload all of the thoughts that you have and the tasks that you have, but getting that out of my head and getting it onto paper and creating a plan so that when I do have that precious time off, I can use it wisely and well. Now I don't feel overwhelmed really at all. I'm excited. I'm hopeful. I have a sense of accomplishment already, and I haven't even done the task yet. And if that is not the purpose of internal ordering and managing not only my projects, but me, I'm managing me. And man, that feels great. And I want that for you too. I'm Kathy Martin. This is the Catbird Quilts. Thank you so much for watching.